Hi everybody, Drew from BeercraftTN here. I want to first of all thank you guys for checking out this video and joining us for our first video workshop. Welcome to our impromptu Beercraft headquarters, which is our basement studio. Happy to have you guys here with us. Thank you for giving us any of your time at all. Normally, as many of you may know and some of you may not, our workshops take place in tap rooms in and around the Knoxville area. Currently, that is not an option. But I am going to list a lot of those house tap rooms in the comments and details below the video so that if you have an opportunity to check them out, they may have ways that you can still be supporting them right now. And I'm going to highly encourage everybody to do that within your means and what you're comfortable with. But back to the workshop, we are going to do some glass etching today. So when people think about glass etching, they oftentimes think of a couple of different methods. You can do it using sandblasting, or what we mean whenever we say etching is going to be using an acid and a resist. So the acid we're going to use today is this Armor Etch Glass Etching Cream. You can find this at most craft stores. It's also available online pretty inexpensively. And it's a great hobbyist kind of entry-level etch chemical. It also is a hexafluorosilicic acid. It is not a very high viscosity acid. It will definitely get into our glasses, but you're pretty safe on your hands and skin for the most part. I still don't recommend that you let it hang out on your skin or your clothes. So for those reasons, we are going to throw some gloves on here in a second. The other part of that, since this is our acid, our resist today is going to be just like in our regular workshops, also by Armor Etch, these over and over stencils. What I do like about these stencils is they can be used, as the name implies, over and over. They will peel off of the sheets. They can go onto your glass, be cleaned and reused. So as we get into placing our stencils, I'll throw the gloves back on here. And we're ready to go ahead and get our stencils down. I have a glass right here that has already been cleaned with just a regular household glass cleaner. I strongly recommend that for yours, but if you don't want to, it's certainly not a required step. It just can kind of help with the actual overall appearance of your etch in the end and making sure you've got solid consistency there. This guy, again, was cleaned just before we started, common household glass cleaner. So I'm gonna pick this floral design here. One thing I wanna tell you guys too, especially if you are working with these particular stencils, is that they can tear a little bit if you're not super careful whenever you pull them off. So just keep that in mind as you are removing them from the sheet if they are still on one. Especially in smaller areas where you have some fine detail, it can be a little difficult to get the whole thing off without some kind of an accident. But if you go slow, you should be mostly okay. And so here we are, and she did all right. And we're ready to get it on the glass. So I've got our glass right here on sort of our close-up camera so that you guys can see how these things go on. If you're working with a pint glass or something that has more of an angular shape to it and you have a longer stencil, you will want to go ahead and put that a little higher up. Just if you're on a lower angle like this and something is curving, you run a risk of getting more bubbles and lack of contact between the stencil and the glass. With this one, since we are just solid all the way around, we should be pretty safe. And I'm going to pick a place pretty arbitrarily here. I think I like her like this. So as you get your stencil down, I always recommend that you go ahead and get in a little bit closer just so you can start smoothing out any bubbles that you have. This one actually went down pretty well, but sometimes you'll notice a little bit of a ridge or parts that are popping up. If that does happen to you, all you want to do is maybe take the back of your fingernail, go ahead and smooth it out just to make sure you've got full contact on the glass. I also am a big proponent of looking through the back side of your glass if you're working on one side versus another, just so you can make sure you've got solid contact. Once you have your stencil in place, the next thing that we're going to do is throw the etch on. I'm using just a regular painter's brush here, regular artist painter's brush. These are brushes that we've kind of designated to go in the acid over and over again, cleaning them back out after workshops, but they've hung on for us for a good while so far. You actually don't need a ton of this etching, and one last step that we're not going to do today for the video, Especially if you've been to the workshop before, you already know, but just for the essence of time, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how you can go onto this without doing this step. But I would recommend, if you're a little unstable with your hand, go ahead and throw some masking tape just around the sides of it, making sure that you've got kind of an extra border built in. But again, for the sake of time and making this something you guys don't have to sit through for too terribly long, we're gonna go ahead and throw the acid on. So I've got a little bit on the brush, not a ton, enough to get a good base going, and we're gonna go right onto that stencil with it. I apply in sort of small circular motions, just making sure that I'm pushing it all the way down to the glass through that stencil, kind of avoiding any bubbling or a lack of coverage. And you can see we've got some areas here that are a little bit thinner, so I'm gonna get just one more dollop out of our etch and lay it down on top. The recommended coverage with this chemical and these stencils is about 1/8 of an inch. I like to go ahead and go just a little bit thicker, not because it won't work with just 1/8, but because I want to make sure that I have full coverage, and sometimes that can be sort of a hard thing to have a full grasp on if you're not super familiar with it or you haven't done it a lot before. And so right there, I'm feeling pretty good. And again, to double check it, I am going to turn it around to the back side, the view you have right here, just to kind of see through. And I don't see any light coming through that etch, so I feel like we're pretty good. So the next step is a pretty simple one. We're going to wait for 5 minutes, and then we will rinse this off, remove the stencil, give it one more rinse, and see where we're at. All right, so we've made it to the sink right now. Our glass has etched for 5-ish minutes or a little bit longer. I know you can kind of see the image coming through right now, but there's still solid coverage whenever you hold it up to the light. It's just a little bit of the backlighting bouncing back off of the sink at this point. So all we're gonna do now is give it a rinse. I'm using just a regular shop towel for this. I just don't want to use anything else that we could damage since the chemical can affect fabrics and things of that nature. So anything that you don't want to get damaged, if you have just a regular towel that you're using for bleach or something like that, this would be a perfect time to go ahead and pull them out. We're gonna let it run gently right across it, knock off a lot of that bulk. And then all I'm going to do is give it a little bit of a rinse like that. We can go ahead and remove that stencil at this point. I know it looks like it's just clear for the time being, but it will actually show up quite a bit more once we get the stencil off, give it one more rinse, and it starts to dry. So with the stencil off, I'm gonna go ahead and throw one more little pass under the water, good little rinse, and we'll start drying her. The cat in the background agrees that we've done good work. And you can't see it super well right now, but whenever we get back downstairs and it's fully dried, you'll be able to see that full etch hanging in there. That's about the only rinse you should need on it for the time being. So we've made it back downstairs with our glass. It has had time to dry now, and as promised, we can kind of see that the image itself is popping out a lot better now. We had pretty good contact, pretty good coverage, so we have a really solid little etch. Anything that you guys are wanting to etch with glass, it'll work the same way. I know we mentioned earlier that it's about 5-ish minutes for how long that etch sets on. As one last example, I do have a glass here that has the same image on it twice, and each of these was actually a different etch time. One was 5 minutes, one was 45. I only show those so we can demonstrate that there really is no major difference in how these things pan out in the end. After about 5 minutes, the acid's pretty well done its job, and your glass is etched. Thank you all again for joining us for this workshop today. Again, we are taking donations for Beercraft right now. If you want to donate at all or help support, you can do so through Venmo at BeercraftTN or Cash App, $BeercraftTN. Thank you guys so much. And again, check out those host tap rooms. Please support any way you can and stay safe. We'll see you in a tap room soon, hopefully.